Thank you. All right, seeing as it's 3 o'clock, I'm now declaring the January meeting of the Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee.
This meeting is being recorded.
Item number 1, or I should say item number 2, public comment. Did we have anybody sign up to speak under general public comment? Seeing none, moving on. 3, approval of the November 30th, 2021 committee minutes. Motion by Supervisor Drabeck, second by Supervisor Overbeck. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. 4A, public hearings, review, possible action, and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration, county zoning changes. So we will now open the public hearing on items 4A 1 through 3. As said, everybody please mute your phones for those in attendance, and online, those who are not speaking, if you're joining over devices. The Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is now meeting in public hearing on the location, plan, specifications, and purpose of the following projects. 4A1, James Gardner on behalf of Dean Grubsack, Rural Estate to Rural Residential, Town of Plover. Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dale Taylor, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Gunther. And public testimony on the text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 1102, Animal Waste Management Ordinance Code. Members of the committee, myself, Chair Jake Langenhahn, Vice Chair Gill will be joining us shortly, Supervisor Conway, Supervisor Seefeld, Supervisor Drabeck, Supervisor Pfeiffer, Supervisor Overbeck, Marilyn Ben will also be joining us shortly, and then our FSA service, or Farm Service Agency representative is currently vacant. Also present are Lori Miskins, our director, Paul Daigle, our county conservationist, Robert Hoffman, our land use technician, Cindy Krager, the administrative coordinator, and Andrew Lynch, the transportation planner. The establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws, but must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. This committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant, anyone wishing to testify, will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in order of those first in favor, second opposed, and then third as interested may appear. The committee may ask questioning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements and on length of the hearing standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the Grubsack, Rural Estate to Rural Residential in the Town of Plover, and we will begin with our staff report. So, Robert, your name, please.
For today's January 4th Environmental Resources Committee meeting. Moving to the findings of fact, we are meeting today to discuss this on January 4th, and the Town of Plover Town Board met on November 9th of 2021 to discuss this petition. In this case, the petitioner is James Gardner of Gardner Land Surveying, and the property owner is Dean E. Grubsack. The location of the rezone request is shown below. The area proposed to be rezoned is located adjacent to County Road Y and approximately 1.29 miles south of the intersection of County Road Z and County Road Y, as shown by the red arrow here below. The nature of the request, the petition of James Gardner on behalf of Dean Grubsack to amend the Marathon County zoning ordinance to rezone lands from rural estate to rural residential, described as below, roughly 8.17 acres of land. The existing zoning district at hand is rural estate, and the proposed zoning district is the rural residential zoning district. Moving to the existing zoning district map for the Town of Plover, as you can see below, the adjacent parcels are zoned as rural residential in orange and general agriculture in white, with other residentially zoned parcels within close proximity. There was a legal notification posted in the Wausau Daily Herald. Moving down to the existing generalized land use / land cover map for the town of Plover, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as cropland, single-family residential, and woodland uses in the town's comprehensive plan existing land use / land cover map. The adjacent land uses are comprised of similar land uses, including single-family residential and woodland uses, as shown below. Moving to the town comprehensive plan future land use map, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as cropland, single-family residential, and woodland land uses in the town's comprehensive plan future land use map. The adjacent land uses are comprised of similar land uses, once again, including single-family residential and woodland uses. Moving down to the farmland preservation plan implications, the area in question was designated as a non-farmland preservation area in the farmland preservation plan. Yet, the town of Plover does not participate in the farmland preservation zoning, therefore there are no parcels within the town zoned as farmland preservation. Moving on to significant parcel limitations or natural features, the area proposed to be rezoned, as shown in the red dotted outline below, has shoreland overlay areas, shown in blue, yet does not have any DNR mapped wetland areas, mapped floodplain areas, or waterways present on the parcel. Moving down to the existing certified survey map, the preliminary one that is, below, shown in a red dotted outline, is once again the approximate area to be rezoned. And moving forward here, there's an aerial photograph showing once again the approximate area to be rezoned with the red dotted outline. And here's a little bit of a zoomed out image depicting the area once again. Moving down to the town recommendation on November 9th of 2021, the Town of Plover Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. And further staff comments regarding the ERC conclusions of law. Staff have found that the rezone is substantially consistent with the following plans: the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan, the Town Comprehensive Plan, and the Marathon County Farmland Preservation Plan. The location of the proposed development does minimize the amount of agricultural land converted and will not substantially impair or limit current or future agricultural uses of other protected farmland. The applicant has demonstrated that there is a need for the proposed development, and that need is related to a proposed land division and subsequent single-family home development. The applicant also has demonstrated that there are adequate public facilities present or they will be provided. We are anticipating, and the applicant has demonstrated, that all necessary public facilities will be provided, if not already provided, given that the proposed development would rely on a private system such as a private well and sanitary system. There also is no anticipated burden on local government, and we anticipate that all applicable building, construction, and use standards will be applied during the process of permitting. Moving forward, the rezone will not cause unreasonable air and water pollution, soil erosion, or adverse impacts on rare or irreplaceable natural areas. The town also has approved the proposed rezone of the property, and our department has not been made aware of any other concerns from other agencies, such as the Department of Natural Resources, Highway, or Department of Transportation. Moving down to the staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. If approved, the town of Plover should update their comprehensive plan to reflect the proposed rezone. The rezone is partially consistent with the future land use map, and the future land use and existing land use maps should also be revised to cover the entire area proposed to be rezoned. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan as indicated by the town resolution. Based upon the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all of the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, Conservation Planning and Zoning staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors.
All right, thank you, Robert. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll proceed to the next section. Public discussion. Anyone in favor of the request via WebEx or in person here? If you could please come forward, state your name for the record for testimony.
Bonnie Groupsack.
Bonnie, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, proceed. If you wish to offer testimony.
Oh, I have nothing to offer.
Okay.
Just wanted to, I thought I just had to, I don't know.
Sure. You, sir, state your name.
Dean Krupsak.
Okay. Dean, do you sort of tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. So typically during this part of the public hearing, it's the opportunity for the applicants to, explain the application. And then if the committee has any questions from the applicant, that gives them the opportunity at that time to ask those questions. So if you have nothing to add, that's perfectly fine. Or did you have something, sir?
Yeah, the only thing, the parcel is being split so that my daughter can build on it also. So it's just going to be a single-family residence being built on the 3 acres.
Very good. Okay. There any questions for the applicants? All right. Quick and painless. See? All right. Thank you both. All right. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of the request, please either come forward at this time or unmute yourself via WebEx. All right. Hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time via WebEx or coming forward in person. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone? Okay. Hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. One more time after this. Anybody wishing to speak as interested on the proposed rezone? Okay. Seeing as there is no one else wishing to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on James Gardner on behalf of Dean Krupsak, Rural Estate to Rural Residential, Town of Plover, closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application and apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Here, Supervisor Pfeiffer.
Go ahead, Supervisor Pfeiffer.
I'd make a motion that we recommend approval of the rezoning of James Gardner on behalf of Dean Krupsak from rural estate to rural residential in the town of Plover and accept the findings of fact as presented by staff.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabeck. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on. 4A2, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dale Taylor, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Gunther. Back to Robert.
All right, item number 4A2. For the public hearing / meeting section, the Town of Gunther Town Board met on December 13th of 2021, and today we are listening to this on January 4th of 2022. The petitioner in this case is Tim Vreeland, and the property owner is Dale Taylor. The location of the rezone request is shown below. The area proposed to be rezoned is located approximately 1 mile east of the intersection of Camp Road and Ledabeer Road near the center of the Town of Gunther, as shown with the red arrow. The nature of the request, the petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dale Taylor to amend the Marathon County zoning ordinance to rezone lands from general agriculture to rural residential, described as below. The size of the parcel is approximately 2.549 acres in size. Moving down to the existing zoning district, the existing zoning district at hand is the general agricultural zoning district, and here is the purpose statement, and the proposed zoning district at hand is the rural residential zoning district. Moving down to the existing zoning district map, here shown below in red, the adjacent parcels are zoned as general agriculture, shown in white, and rural estate, shown in orange. There was a legal notification posted in the Wausau Daily Herald. Moving on to the existing generalized land use / land cover map for the town of Gunther, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as other agriculture land uses in the town's comprehensive plan existing land use land cover map. Adjacent land uses are comprised of similar land uses, including single-family residential, agricultural, and woodland uses, as shown below. Moving on to the Town Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown to be designated for other agricultural land uses in the Town's Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map. The adjacent land uses are comprised of similar land uses, once again including single-family residential, agricultural, recreational, and woodland land uses, as shown below. Moving on to the Farmland Preservation Plan implications, the area in question was designated as a non-farmland preservation area in the Farmland Preservation Plan. Yet, the town of Gunther does not participate in farmland preservation zoning, therefore there are no parcels within the town zoned farmland preservation. Below is an image showing this. Moving on to significant parcel limitations or other natural features, the area proposed to be rezoned does have DNR mapped wetlands, yet has no FEMA floodplain areas nor any shoreland overlay areas. And then you can see the DNR mapped wetland areas below with the green vertical lines. Moving on to the preliminary certified survey map, below is an image depicting the approximate area to be rezoned. Moving forward is an aerial photograph of the area showing the proposed area to be rezoned with a red dotted outline. And below is an image, another aerial image, showing a more zoomed out image of the parent parcel, shown in red. Moving down to the town recommendation, on December 13th of 2021, the Town of Gunther Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Moving down to the staff comments regarding the Environmental Resources conclusions of law, the rezoning is substantially consistent with the following plans: the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan, the Town Comprehensive Plan, and the Marathon County Farmland Preservation Plan. The location of the proposed development minimizes the amount of agricultural land converted and will not substantially impair or limit current or future agricultural uses of other protected farmlands. The applicant has demonstrated that there is a need for the proposed development, and that need is related to a proposed land division. The applicant also has demonstrated that adequate public facilities are present or will be provided, and the applicant has demonstrated that providing public facilities will not be an unreasonable burden to local government. The rezoning will not cause unreasonable air and water pollution, soil erosion, or other adverse effects on rare or irreplaceable natural areas. The town has approved the proposed rezone of the property, and there have not been any other concerns from other agencies brought forward regarding the proposed rezone. Moving down to the staff recommendation, if approved, the Town of Gunther should update their comprehensive plan to reflect the proposed rezone. The future and existing land use maps already partially reflect the rezone in question, yet should be revised to include the whole area proposed to be rezoned from general agriculture to rural residential. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown as a non-farmland preservation area in the Farmland Preservation Plan, yet once again, the town does not participate in farmland preservation zoning. Based on the information provided, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town recommendation resolution, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, Conservation Planning and Zoning staff recommend the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Any questions for Robert? All right, moving on. Public discussion. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of their request via WebEx, please unmute yourself, or in person, please come forward at this time. I'm just going to ask, is Tim Vreeland on? Because he usually speaks. Okay. I'll call again. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone request, please identify yourself at this time. Okay, hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed request, please identify yourself at this time. If you're on WebEx, please unmute yourself, or in person, please come forward. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, identify yourself at this time. Hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. One last time. Anybody wishing to speak as interested? All right. Hearing that no one else wishes to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on Tim Vreeland on behalf of D.L. Taylor, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Gunther, now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Chair Supervisor Pfeiffer.
Go ahead, Supervisor Pfeiffer.
I'd make a motion that we recommend approval of the rezoning request of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dale Taylor from general agriculture to rural residential in the Town of Gunther, and accept the findings of facts as presented by staff.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabek. Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 4A3, public testimony on the text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 1102 Animal Waste Management Ordinance Code. We'll begin with the staff report, and I think now we're going to go from Robert to Paul Daigle. All right. State your name, please. Not really.
Paul Daigle, I'm the county conservationist from Marathon County.
Paul, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. And before we get too far, I think we're getting some background on WebEx. We'll clear that up.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to ask if anyone's got a mic open that we close that on WebEx.
All right, we're good. Thanks, Paul. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to start out by just presenting to the committee. There was a memorandum in your packet, and that clearly kind of gave an broad overview of the changes that are requested in the ordinance. There's a hyperlink to the ordinance that documented the changes with the text in different colors showing subtractions or addition to the ordinance, and also a clear timeline of what we propose for the ordinance. And but what I'd like to do, rather than go, unless requested by someone on the committee, rather than going over line by line the item changes, I'd like to just show a quick PowerPoint capturing and summarizing the major points in the ordinance. And can you all see the PowerPoint now on the screen? Or did it come up? Yeah. Policy implications. I'll start with the revisions to the ordinance, and as was stated, this is to 11.02 Animal Waste Management Ordinance.
Paul, did you want it in? I think it's in presenter view.
Yeah, you're right. I'm
Yeah.
going to hit from beginning. Thank you. Oh. All right.
Yeah, I think it's still in presenter view.
Right.
Much better.
The purpose of our ordinance, as this is not changing, it's to regulate the location, design, construction, installation, alteration, operation, maintenance, closure, use, and application of animal waste from waste storage facilities within the county's borders. The biggest reason for this is to prevent the degradation of surface and groundwater within the county, protect the groundwater and surface water resources, provide for the administration and enforcement of the ordinance, and provide penalties for its violations. Policy implications, I always like to take a time to reflect on these, and these are consistent with Objective 5.2 and 6.3 of Marathon County's strategic plan. In addition, they're very consistent with the newly passed Land and Water Resource Management Plan for Marathon County, which specifically identify the Natural Resources 151 Agricultural Performance Standards and prohibitions of Wisconsin that are being incorporated into the ordinance. I'd also like to highlight the engagement within the community. As I started out back in August, my personal view was these are not considerable changes, that they're more minor, but I also understood there's a lot of language being added that might not have been clear to probably the biggest user group would be the farmers. And so we took the time to reach out to over 900 farmers within the county, starting with a letter and inviting them to 2 open houses. And also, if they couldn't make them, that they could have individual phone calls, virtual meetings, or in-person meetings with department staff to answer any and all questions with them. So those mailings did go out. They also went to all of our towns within the county's borders. And there was some local media coverage as well. What was interesting was we also reached out to some of the farm groups in October to try to get on the agenda at their regularly scheduled meetings, so they didn't really have to spend time going to any special meetings. But that offer was not taken up at that point. But once our letters went out, there were some concerns raised amongst the farming community. But I truly believe we took steps. We ended up having 3 separate meetings on top of that in December, as well as several conference calls with farmers to address all their concerns. And I think we did a good job answering those questions once that letter went out to the farmers. Again, the reasons for the revisions and clarification, it's really to add terminology that we wanted to include in the definition section. And but the bottom line is to break out the state performance standards and prohibitions that are included in the ordinance, and allow us to compete for grants that would really go directly to farmers. We lost points on some state grants, and specifically, we were told at a local level with DNR staff that we had everything in our revision that we did 2 years ago clearly covered. We wrote a very efficient, easy to read ordinance, but once our grants reached the state level, the members from the DNR ranking those grants did not give us the points for having the performance standards in our ordinance. And so really we're adding more language, but I really don't believe we're adding anything but one new performance standard in there that I'll highlight in a minute. And here's the grant we left on the table, and usually we compete very well and pride ourselves for bringing a lot of money into Marathon County. And this is the actual score sheet that I received from the DNR when we submitted funding for the Fenwood grant. And as you can see in red, we requested $411,000 over a 3-year period, primarily cropland practices and a small amount for staffing grants. And we received 156 points. And the project that did get approved right above us was out of Gamey County, and they had a score of 167. And we were told that we lost out on an additional 20.35 points because we did not have these all spelled out in our ordinance. So really, we're making a correction and asking the county board to consider that, and first the ERC to move that onto the board. Really to get more farmers, funds to do practices in Marathon County and get conservation on the ground. So what I wanted to do, and this really helped the farmers, was explain, all right, in our existing definition, what's in there? Why are they being broken out? So first of all, the definition of manure, we're not changing that at all, but it does include leachate, which is a separate performance standard that you're going to now see added to the language in the ordinance. There's also a separate NR 151 standard for processed wastewater. So when we talk about that, that's anything indirectly used in the operation of the animal feeding operations that result in spillage or overflow from animal water systems, washing, cleaning, flushing of pens, barns, waste storage facilities, direct contact for swimming, washing or spraying or cooling of animals, or dust control, and water that comes in any contact with raw materials or animal byproducts. A lot of folks would call that milk house waste, but it can also be processing waste as well. But we already have that in there. We wrote a very inclusive definition to start with that incorporated 3 standards, but we're asking to break them out. Another thing that was in our existing definition was runoff of stored animal waste, and then runoff from an animal lot. We already have that covered, but now we're asked to add that language, which is definitely longer, but it's really to compete for more money. And so one of the things that you'll see added also is unconfined animal manure piles, and that's in our current ordinance, again in that definition, but now it's being broken out. The other one you'll see is the state performance standards on barnyard runoff. And again, I already showed you how that's included in our current ordinance, but now it's being broken out in separate language for that. The third is degradation of stream banks, and again, that's in our current ordinance, but really, you can still graze stream banks in Marathon County, but they have to be well managed and limited access. We kind of have a before and after example in the slideshow, but that's being broken out again as a separate definition. And again, processed wastewater, silage, leachate, those are broken out as separate standards, and they're currently included in the ordinance, but there's new language for that standard. And this is just one perception was we're outlawing bags and silage piles, and that's certainly not the case. What's in the ordinance already is direct runoff into the waters of the state. So this is just an example of a well-managed bag storage site. It's on an upland site. There's a really nice grass buffer below it. We really don't see any dead vegetation below that. And there's no large piles of refusal waste silage that actually can run off when there's lots of rainfall going through there. And so this is a good site. Here's one that certainly we do have issues with in Marathon County, and we're working with to get corrections on. But where those bunkers actually slope towards the road ditch, certainly it allows those bunkers to be pretty dry, but we get significant runoff directly into the road ditch. And this is something that is not a well-managed site that we would really look for corrections. And but again, that's already correct in our current ordinance, but we're breaking it out. Again, just as a reminder, and this was the same as 2 years ago, is nothing can be more strict than current state law. But the inclusions are to have local control rather than having state DNR staff doing enforcement or administration of this. And so we added some definitions that have been clarified by the state as well since our last update, identifying the accounting period for phosphorus index, and this is part of the nutrient management standard, really identifying that calendar year of what we're looking at, identifying a crop producer, identifying what the phosphorus index is, and then this is a new one, the surface water, and we're adding a 5-foot tillage setback. And again, when I worked with the local DNR staff, him and I and our staff and the farmers, that they all agreed we really can't even find a site within Marathon County where a farmer can get within 5 feet of a stream and do tillage, or a lake. We thought it was unnecessary language in our ordinance, but again, we want to get those points, so I did include that in the ordinance at this point. Tolerable soil loss is a performance standard included, and it's also in the definition, but again, that's part of a nutrient management plan already, so there's really nothing new for a farmer. And water quality management area is broken out as well. So, you'll see, again, these things are being broke out. I'm not going to repeat them all again, but clearly the new language that is not in the ordinance relates to clean waters, unconfined animal waste piles, and then that 5-foot tillage setback, with the 5-foot tillage setback being the only thing that's brand new. Everything else is just new language, but not new regulations. So in its summary, there's a clarification of terminology. We're using the state performance standards that are included in the ordinance but need to be pulled out individually, and mainly to get more state grant funds into Wisconsin, into Marathon County. And these are tools to use for enforcement of worst case scenarios and situations within the county. And I, at that point, would open it up to any questions. If the chair is willing to entertain them at this point, maybe you want to close the public hearing until you take questions. That's the chair's. You can decide how you want to handle that, but certainly on anything I presented, I'm willing to answer questions too.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Paul, first of all, for the report. Secondly, if the committee does have any questions at this time on the presented information from Paul, please ask those questions now. Afterwards, we'll extend public comment to those on the call and those, or if any in person here, wish to have any testimony on the proposed ordinance changes. So anybody on the committee right now with questions on the material that Paul's presented, please ask them at this time. I do have kind of a, well, I shouldn't say I have two questions, possibly three. First of all, the feedback that you got, you had included in the presentation that you had feedback from the farm groups as well as the 900 farmers that the memo letter had been sent to. That's correct?
Yeah, so yes, we did have, there was no written comment that ended up coming in for the public hearing today from anyone, But we did have questions and concerns, but we really feel we've clarified that. And at the end, everyone at least indicated to me that all their questions had been answered. I guess if there's farmers on the line today that didn't get to us or maybe still have some concerns, they may voice their opinion today. But up until now, I feel everything got answered and clarified at that point.
That would have been my question 1.5, which is, do you feel that after information has been provided that the concerns from those individuals have been adequately addressed?
Yeah, I really
Okay.
think they understand why we're doing this, and that's the important piece, yeah.
Okay. To be honest, that's all I have. I think you did a very good job presenting the information. Anything else from the committee? All right. Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Anybody wishing to speak in favor, opposed, or as interested on the proposed ordinance changes for the text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for the Marathon County Chapter 11.02 Animal Waste Management Ordinance Code? If you're on WebEx, please unmute yourself. If you're here, please come forward at this time. I'll call again. Anybody wishing to speak, I guess I'll do this once for each. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance changes, please identify yourself at this time. Hearing none, anybody wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance changes, please identify yourself at this time. Finally, anybody wishing to speak as interested on the proposed ordinance changes, please identify yourself at this time. All right. Hearing none, after calling multiple times, if no one else wishes to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on the for the public testimony on the text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County Chapter 1102 Animal Waste Management Ordinance Code now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application. I should say will now deliberate on the ordinance changes and the testimony that we accepted. Now I have a clarifying question for staff, which would be proper action at this time would be to send these changes forward to the county board with support from the committee. Is that correct? All right, thank you.
Chair, this is Supervisor Pfeiffer.
Supervisor Pfeiffer, go ahead.
I'd make a recommendation that, or I would recommend that we recommend the county board approve the amended changes to General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County Chapter 11.02 Animal Waste Management as presented by staff.
And ultimately moving the changes forward to the county board. Is that correct, Supervisor Pfeiffer?
Correct.
Thank you. All right, motion has been made. Is there a second?
Supervisor Conwell, second.
Second by Supervisor Overbeck. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you to staff for the reports today. Moving on. I need to get back to where I was in. Sorry, I need to get out of the code of ordinances. Here we go. All right. Moving on. 4B, review and possible recommendations to county board for its consideration. Town zoning changes pursuant to with stat 60.62 sub 3. We have none. 4AC, review and possible recommendations to county board for its consideration. None. 4D, review and possible action, environmental repair fund status. The reason I placed this on the agenda again was because I wanted to have some more discussion with the county board chairman with the goal of having more conversations about engaging in legislative advocacy to make some changes to the Wisconsin statutes to leverage these funds. I think Supervisor Pfeiffer had done an excellent job last month summarizing the changes that would need to be made in order for us to use these funds. I will be honest with the rest of the committee, due to the holiday season, I did not have a chance to speak with the chairman on this particular item. I will place this on the agenda for next month and hopefully have the county board chairman in attendance with the hopes of having some discussions then. Is there anything else from the committee to add?
Chair Supervisor Pfeiffer.
Go ahead, Supervisor Pfeiffer.
Yeah, I would also recommend that we have the Director for Solid Waste, Melissa, at the meeting too for her input.
That is a request that can be made. I will look into that, Supervisor Pfeiffer. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So more on that next month. We'll have some more discussion then. 4D2, zoning and regulatory program staffing restructure.
That's going to be me and Lance. So in your packet, there is a memo where we're proposing and asking the ERC to support an immediate restructure within zoning and regulatory programs at CPZ. If you take a look on page 2, figure 1 of the memo, that shows you how we're set up in the zoning and regulatory staff right now. 8 positions, there's 7 full-time and 1 casual position with the land resource manager at the top. And then we have a zoning specialist, a planning analyst, and then 3, technically they're planning technicians. Their working title, this is kind of just a nuance that got adopted over time for some reason, is specialists, but they are classified as technicians. And then under the planning analyst and zoning, we have an additional 1.5 technicians. And right now, the zoning administrator title lives with the planning analyst within zoning and regulatory programs. What we're proposing through the restructure is we continue to maintain these 8 staff, 7 full-time, 1 casual still, but we want to move the zoning administrator title and some of the high-level responsibilities that have lived in that zoning analyst position to a management level. That's the first thing we want to do. And part of this is to make it consistent with the duties that other managers are holding at CPZ. We feel there's a lot of discretion and responsibility with some of these decisions, and we do believe they should live at a management level. The second thing we're proposing to do then is we're removing that analyst position and creating 3 more senior zoning specialist positions. They're actually just creating 2 specialist positions because there's 1 already there. And that would give consistency across zoning and regulatory programs to have 3 specialist positions, one that is focusing on zoning, 1 that's focusing on non-metallic mining, and 1 on the private on-site wastewater treatment systems programs within our department. And we believe this will align the job duties and expectations to be more consistent across all of zoning and regulatory programs, and also create a more advancement opportunities within POUTS, but also within all of zoning and regulatory programs, so that it can help with retention and hopefully reduce turnover in the department as well, so that when new staff is coming in, they can see that there are opportunities for them to advance. So then if you look at figure 2, that illustrates the new structure again. There is 1 error in the figure. The line, that blue line that's going from the 2 planning technicians up to the zoning specialist should go to the POUTS zoning specialist. So that's just an error in the diagram. So again, the new structure would have the zoning administrator and some of the more senior duties live with the land resources manager. We would have 3 zoning specialist positions and then another 3.5 technicians under that. In terms of the financial impact, we did run analysis with employee resources on the estimated budget impact, and they agreed it was more or less a wash. It's pretty neutral in terms of the impacts. There are some scenarios where maybe the cost could rise by $1,000 to $2,000, but based on our revenues that we've been collecting in fees over the last several years, usually when we project revenues, we're always bringing in more in fee revenue than we're projecting. So we believe any kind of increase could be covered by our fee revenues. And why are we asking for this now? I've had about 6 or 7 months in the position now, and we've also had some vacancies recently that have allowed us a chance to kind of take a look at zoning and regulatory programs, and we feel this is a structure that's going to work better for us in the department. And we want to be able to go forward with it now so that we can fill our vacancies and get new staff on board and trained for the upcoming construction season. So, Lance, what did I?
No, I thank you. This is Administrator Leonard. I think Lori did a great job laying out kind of the rationale underlying the restructure. I'm going to kind of go to an even higher level and just talk just for a minute about process. Why is this before you in the first place? And I'm sure everyone sleeps with the Marathon County Code of Ordinances right next to their bed. But each of you, because of your service on the ERC, this is the body, the first step in any new position or restructure examination for any of the departments over which you have oversight, one of them being conservation, planning, and zoning. So that ordinance is section 4.20. So the initial proposal comes to you for consideration. It only gets to you if it is a proposal that is generated by the department that is supported by administration. So I can tell you I do support this restructure, and I'll get into the why I support it in just a little bit, but Lori did a great job of kind of alluding to a lot of those reasons. But why it's before you is because you're the first step under 4.20. Now, the board has further delineated underneath that rule that the next step, should you support this restructure, would be that it would move to the HR, Finance, and Property Committee for its consideration. Your ordinance specifically delineates that those considerations should happen at certain points during the year. You, not all that long ago, approved the Marathon County budget for 2022. As part of that process, you approve essentially the organization of departments. There's a reason I added all the organizational charts for all the departments to your budget book to essentially demonstrate that, because again, under your rules, under 4.20, new position requests and restructures generally are only considered by the HR, Finance, and Property Committee during the month of March, the month of August, and during the normal budget cycle. In this instance, it's not within those limits, and there are exceptions in 4.20. For example, if there's a new position entirely funded by grant funds, you're not subject to those limitations. Likewise, the board, as you all know, you can effectively elect to suspend your rules at any given time by taking action with a 2/3 vote. The reason we're asking to move forward with this right now, going through that process of consideration here, then consideration if you support it at HR, Finance, and Property, and ultimately to the full board, is, as Lori referenced, I think timing is really good. This is essentially a wash in terms of costs, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on why I think it's actually even a better deal in terms of costs, in terms of the practical implications. But we've had turnover, just like every business that, if you watch the news or you run your own business or you're employed, you see there's a lot of movement within the labor market right now. We're not immune to that. And we, unlike a lot of other private sector entities, our general approach has been to maintain incumbents within positions rather than do wholesale restructures and move people out of an organization that are performing well. My analogy is, you think about professional football. If you're a left tackle and you're good, but they have the opportunity to get a better left tackle, you better find some other skills or find another team because they're going to move you out. We're generally not like that. We have a much longer life cycle in the county. Our success isn't determined by winning a game or a season. It's, we don't plan on going anywhere. So the timing for a restructure right now is really good for the reasons that Lori referenced, that we have some vacancies, particularly in that land resource manager position and in the zoning administrator position. And if you think about it, so why now? Not only are those vacancies there, why is the cost, why is it a good move in terms of cost perspective? Right now, the labor market, to maintain multiple kind of high-level professionals in that zoning space is difficult. I think this gives us a better opportunity to be successful long-term for all the reasons Lori referenced. we are able to bring people in, have them grow within our organization from, for example, that initial planning technician B23 position. They could grow into perhaps a lead zoning specialist position, that B25, and then ultimately they'd have the opportunity to be considered for a land resources manager position. You see a much more linear progression over time, which I think is advantageous, as opposed to effectively having to maintain an individual at a C52 management level, highly professional individual, as well as another individual at a C42, which was the planning analyst zoning administrator level. It gives more of a sustainable structure in terms of individual growth, but also organizational growth. So I think this makes total sense to me. The reorganization we did about a year ago, I think, was, again, I think it was a better organizational structure than we had before. This I see as another iteration of that. It's an improved restructure of the organization. So I see it as a positive. If it doesn't work, don't worry, we'll come back and we'll ask you to try something else. I mean, my approach as administrator is, we're gonna try new things. We need to innovate to be successful. I think this is an example of that. So I'm asking that you do, after consideration, move it forward to the HR Finance and Property Committee for its consideration at its upcoming meeting. And I do understand it would be outside of the time limits for consideration by that committee, and I'll talk to the chair to see if he's willing to do that. But at the very least, then we'd be able to consider that at the next available meeting, or if the county board doesn't suspend its rules by a 2/3 vote for purposes of considering the reorganization, it would be in March. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions individuals may have and defer them to Lori.
Any questions for Lance or Lori? Lance, that means you're getting better at delegating, so. All right, hearing.
Chair, this is Supervisor Pfeiffer.
Go ahead, Supervisor Pfeiffer, thank you.
I see what we're doing, and I agree it makes sense in the context of being able to grow people from within the organization. I think that's always something important when we can find people in the organization and create some opportunities for them to move up in their careers and still keep them on board. Just refreshing. So with that manager, that C-level position, can you just kind of go over how some of the other or some of these other managers in the organization work? So we have, is it 3? This would be taking it from 4 managers to 3 managers. Is that correct?
So the managers are not changing. The C52 is in place now and would remain in place. So, but that manager is one of 4 other managers and a director. So what we're doing though is making some of their duties more consistent with what the other managers are doing. So.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I understand now.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Otherwise, sounds like a motion would be in order, and then that would travel to finance, and that would travel to the county board. Okay.
And Lance, are you
correct.
saying they have to do the 2/3 vote first? No.
Nope,
Okay.
it would go to HR Finance,
Then to the chair. Well, yeah.
into the full board.
Yep. Okay. What is the pleasure of the committee?
I'll make a motion to move the zoning and regulatory program staffing restructure onto H&R and finance for review.
All right, motion by Supervisor Overbeck. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Draybeck. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. All right. 5, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports and committee discussion. A, department updates, conservation planning, zoning, park rec and forestry, solid waste. Under CPZ, we have 5.1, CPZ zoning ordinance education and proposed revisions memo. Chapter 17 zoning code and open house scheduled for Tuesday, January 18th from 10 to 4:30, 210 River Drive, large conference room. So guessing that'll be you, Robert?
I think it's
Lori.
for this
Lori.
one right now.
Oh,
Maybe.
yes.
Yeah, I
Thank
was
you.
going to say on
Staff reports.
January 18th, it'll be all of us there. But-
Fair.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so we are doing our annual text amendments to Chapter 17 over the course of the year. As you know, we receive feedback from the towns, and we also kind of look internally in terms of where we need possibly clarity, consistency, or need to update something to perhaps make consistent with state or federal standards. So this table that was presented in your packet identifies 17 text amendment changes to Chapter 17. It just summarizes them at this point. As the memo mentions, we will have a full marked up draft available next week. But this is the first step in bringing it to you all to say, these are the items that we are proposing for changes. Some of them did come from discussions with towns, so we started earlier this fall. We did some outreach to towns, and we've had some conversations with them over the last year on some of these changes. And then, again, some of them just came internally from things we were tracking that were inconsistent or needed clarity. So I'm not going to go through every change in the table right now. I did want to highlight a couple for you because I think they are more considerable than some on the list, so that the ERC has time to consider these. The first I want to highlight is amendment number 4, which would make changes to where shipping and storage containers would be permitted. So right now, and I think, Robert, do you want to bring up the table that's in 17203? I think that would help. I don't know if I'm
Current table?
the marked up table's fine. I mean, the draft that we have in process is fine, but that way they can see the change if you can zoom in on that line. But I believe this item came before the ERC last year and resulted in conditional use in the agricultural and commercial districts for shipping and storage containers. Through the course of the last year, we've actually had several violations come about related to increase in use of shipping and storage containers in our towns, and particularly the town of Plover and the town of Elderon have communicated with us a couple times about a desire to change where shipping containers could be permitted and where they could be considered through conditional use. And so that's what this amendment is doing, is proposing a change to that. It's saying that in the larger districts, the agricultural and the commercial districts, we would permit them, and in the smaller residential districts, they could still be considered through a conditional use permit. This was actually originally proposed by the town of Plover via petition, but they decided they would wait for, they would not submit their petition and wait and see what the ERC wanted to do this year in terms of amendments to Chapter 17. And then, did anyone have questions on that one, or? Okay. The other one we wanted to point out was text amendment proposed change number 5, which is dealing with major home occupations, home professional businesses, and permitting uses within those residential districts for these types of uses. And this is something that's kind of coming out of the pandemic in terms of increased interest and request to sometimes have those things on. Landowners want to be able to allow that use in their residential areas. So, and it would still have to go through, the change would only say it was allowed through conditional use permit. I think one other one to note is maybe just text amendment number 17. In terms of the definitions, we want to include decks as less than 100 square feet and fences of less than 100 linear feet as defined as minor structures, so they would not require a general zoning permit, but they'd still have to meet all applicable setbacks. And this is really just to also reduce burden on our landowners in terms of these are pretty minor structures, so we just don't want them to have to go through as much to do that type of change to their land. So again, there's 17 in the table. We will have a full marked up draft on next week for people to look at. And then on January 18th, we're holding an open house at CPZ from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And we'll also be emailing the draft out to the towns when it's ready so that they can take a look and submit comment. Our goal is to go through this comment process this month and then bring it back to the ERC in February for your approval and hopefully adoption for this upcoming construction season.
Okay. Any questions for Lori? Lori, I have this is kind of a general question for staff because I need to get some cobwebs out of my head. So with the zoning code changes, are those once every 2 years or are they annually?
I think
As needed.
As needed?
As needed. I think we have been doing annuals, my understanding, but it's if we have a year where we don't think there's anything significant, then yeah, we would table it till the next year. So
Okay. It'd be nice to get that on a regular schedule. The reason I bring this up is because I don't like, at least personally as a supervisor, and other supervisors feel free to add on as you wish, I don't like when we do ordinance changes, and this goes for anything, right before an election cycle. The reason being is because now we have this, and we experienced it a couple of years ago, this timeline that we have to get it done by. Otherwise, you have to go through that education cycle for the committee members again by April. Now, we've got plenty of time here, and this isn't anything related to the suggestions here. We have plenty of time to discuss that. But in regards to that, the difficulty is if you have a new town board and they're under county zoning and they're working with the code and they're 1 year into this thing because they're on the off year, they have 1 year of experience and then they submit comments on this. Well, if we did it on our non-election year, but we did it on their election year, right? They wouldn't have a whole lot of experience to express comment in this code. Do you see where I'm going with that? So this isn't something that can be addressed today. It's just a general comment that it would be nice if we could figure out some sort of schedule for the ordinance changes. But, other than that, timeline-wise, I'm guessing February, or we'll have to have a public hearing, I'm guessing next month on this, correct?
yeah, so we'd have the public hearing in February, and then again we have the open house in January here. Ideally, yes, it goes to you in February for approval, but if we need more time to discuss, then it can also go to March. So.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Any other questions? If not, I'm sure based on the suggestions from the list thus far, I'm sure we'll have some next month. So thank you for the report. Okay, 5A2, update on Fenwood Creek. 2A, funding utilizing local fiscal recovery funds, and 2B, university project results. Paul, take it away.
Yeah, all right. So just provide an update. I know that the Human Resource Finance and Facilities Committee is going to be starting to meet on the use of some of these funds, and I wanted to just remind the committee that the ERC did send a letter in supporting the use of our local fiscal recovery funds for the Fenwood Creek project, and hopefully if you're on that or can bend the ear of supervisors that are that we can get support for that project. And just to keep that at the forefront, we continue to look for state and federal funds for that project, and we will be submitting a small grant again for roughly $400,000 to the DNR. That is not a rich fund, but it does provide some funding for projects. And I just wanted to kind of keep that at the forefront for you as well. And then also to let you know that our university projects, at least related to conservation, some of them are starting to roll in now, and we're really pleased with a few of them. I don't know how deep this committee wants to get, but if we have a lighter agenda, I'd like to bring some of the information we're getting from them. One was related to a landowner survey in the Fenwood Creek, and there's some nice surprises in there actually, and good information for us to use in targeting our educational efforts and engagement efforts with landowners in the Fenwood Creek. But we're also working on some with a gully erosion inventory within the county, a buffer inventory, and some of that information is starting to come in. But these are, again, University of Wisconsin students, and we're getting some nice products for very cheap costs that would take a lot of staff time for us to do. So I guess I'd probably review these with the chair prior to putting them on the agenda, but there's certainly a good use of funds, and we always get out of them what we put into them. So if we have staff engaging with the students early on and really defining the outcome we want, we get a much better product. And because when we submit our request, they're fairly vague probably for a student. It was surprising a lot of engineering students did work on this, but they really tackled it and did a good job on some of this. So just to let you know that's out there, and those projects continue to move forward.
All right, Paul, I did have a question. With the local fiscal recovery funds, and this might be rehashing something that we might have already talked about, but the state of Wisconsin got some, at the state level. Have they done anything conservation-wise, utilizing their ARPA dollars for water projects that we would be able to apply?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have not seen any type of call for proposals, but as I believe I told you maybe 6 months ago we did seek support from local legislators, but they really don't have a lot of access to that. I believe the governor has the big control over it. It's roughly $2 billion. Yep. But I did have about a half-hour discussion with the lieutenant governor regarding the Fenwood, and if we could if he could try to secure funding for the Fenwood through the state funds. And I haven't heard back from that request, but we certainly had a long discussion about it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Paul? All right. Thank you again. All right. 6, policy issues discussion and committee determination of the county board for its consideration. There's none. 7, next meeting date, February 1st, 2022 at 3 p.m. Assembly room. Location and future agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. B, announcements, requests, correspondence.
I have one.
Administrator Leonard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for all of the committee members, you're going to perhaps learn a new term over the next couple of weeks relative to information technology and security, and that is multi-factor authentication. All of you as county board members are going to have an application pushed to your iPad. I just want to make you aware because it's going to happen prior to your board meeting on the 20th. You're actually going to get a notification on the 18th. It's not spam. Don't be alarmed. We'll talk about it on the 20th at your board meeting, but just wanting to make every one of the committees aware that for internet security reasons, we're implementing multi-factor authentication, which all of you probably already use if you have an online banking system where it says we'll send you need to enter a text message code to access your information. It's a very similar thing with respect to your iPads. It's being required by insurance companies, the county's insurer. So you'll learn more, but just wanting to make you all aware that you're going to see a notification on the 18th. Don't be alarmed. It's not spam. You don't need to call the IT department right away. We'll talk about it on the 20th. That's all.
Thank you, Administrator. Anything else? Supervisor Overbeck.
I just got a comment back on the zoning, some of the changes. When I started thinking about, we talked about number 4 as far as being professionals or offices within homes and things like that. Are we doing anything as far as research into how that's changing in the fact that more and more offices are actually shutting down their offices and moving their employees back into their homes. And being that we're expanding our broadband throughout the county, that opens up an opportunity for others to move away from their work, their typical office split, and live remotely and still be working for those companies. Is that something the Economic Development Committee might look at with us as far as zoning and see an opportunity for Marathon County with our resources to really look at how we could expand, make it attractive for people to move here and work remotely?
Sure. We can have a discussion that next month. Not on the agenda, otherwise we could right now, but we'll put it on the agenda. Thank you, Supervisor Overbeck. All right. Any other announcements, requests? Happy New Year, everybody. Last couple months of the term is always exciting. If you want to run again, hopefully you got your papers in by, well, you don't got too much time left. All right. Item number 8, adjournment. I'd entertain a motion. Motion by Supervisor Drabeck. Second by Supervisor Overbeck. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We are adjourned. I feel guilty staring at you two. It's two in front of me. You're only here. Well, good.
Makes you uneasy.
Guys have a good holiday?
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, my